Welcome to Easy English, your go-to channel for improving your English and life.
You know that feeling, right? That quiet nudge. Or maybe it's more like a loud siren call telling you something. Something needs to shift. That sense that you're maybe on the brink of something different, but you're just, well, waiting.
Yeah, waiting for the perfect time or maybe permission or just, a bit more courage.
Exactly. And we often imagine that changing our lives requires this monumental effort, a complete redo, starting totally from scratch.
Absolutely. Transformation feels huge, like scaling a mountain. It seems like it has to be this long, really arduous process.
But what if the most significant changes, the ones that truly redirect your course, aren't about tearing everything down and starting over?
Okay.
What if they stem from something much more focused? What if, and this is a really powerful idea we've been looking at, what if you were simply one conscious decision away from setting your life on a completely new path?
That's a really compelling perspective because it takes that huge, overwhelming feeling of needing to fix everything and it just condenses it. It focuses on the potential, the leverage of a single intentional choice, like a pivot point.
And that's precisely what we're exploring today. We've been going through a whole lot of thinking and discussion that really zooms in on this very concept, the surprising power held within just one single choice.
That's right. And what we found covers, well, everything from the psychology behind it, what's going on in our heads when we face these big choices, to practical ways to, spot those moments and actually make the decision. And even some really inspiring real life stories, people whose lives genuinely changed course because of one brave move.
Okay, so our goal here is to help guide you through understanding why these single decisions can be so incredibly impactful, and maybe how you can recognize or even create one for yourself. Let's see what we can uncover.
Well, what's really interesting right from the start is how this isn't just like feel-good pop psychology. The core idea that you're one decision away, it seems grounded in the power of a single intentional action to break those old established patterns.
Yeah.
It's really about choosing consciously to step off the familiar track.
It does simplify things, doesn't it? Instead of feeling like you need this perfect 10-year plan all mapped out,
Right.
it suggests identifying that one action you can take, maybe even right now, that has the potential to start, well, a ripple effect.
And when we look at the psychology behind this, the ideas we looked at point out that our brains are basically in this constant internal negotiation.
Okay.
You've got the planning, reasoning part, let's call it the rational architect,
Yeah.
trying to weigh up the options logically.
Right. The part that loves spreadsheets and pro-con lists. We all know that part.
Exactly that one. And then you've got the part that reacts based more on feelings, on past experiences. It's more like an emotional guard dog, wired for safety, for comfort.
Okay.
And that guard dog, it barks the loudest whenever you consider doing something new, something uncertain.
That's the internal tug of war, the one that feels so draining sometimes, especially when the decision feels really big or bold. Your rational architect sees the potential upside, the growth, but the emotional guard dog is just sounding all the alarms about discomfort, uncertainty, maybe failure.
Precisely. And the thinking here highlights this concept called comfort zone bias. It's basically your brain's built-in preference for what it already knows, for familiar territory.
Even if that familiar place isn't actually serving you, like even if it's kind of limiting or unfulfilling.
Exactly. Staying put feels safer purely because it's the known quantity.
But that feeling of safety, it can be really misleading, can it? Especially if you're stuck somewhere that's just draining your energy or stopping you from growing.
Yeah.
What the discussions really emphasize is framing that fear, that doubt, not as a big red stop sign, but just as, well, a natural biological response. It often just means, okay, pay attention. This feels important.
Understanding that internal dynamic is so key. It's what allows you to acknowledge the fear, see it for what it is, but not let it paralyze you. It helps you push past that initial resistance and make the choice anyway.
And that seems to be where the profound change kicks off. So why can one decision actually change everything?
Well, it creates what some describe as this powerful domino effect. You make one significant positive shift, and it starts knocking over other things in your life. It leads to these realignments, sometimes in ways you couldn't have fully predicted.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about the one presented. Just deciding to consistently wake up an hour earlier each day. Now, that choice itself isn't, earth-shattering on its own.
Right, it's just an hour.
But that extra hour, if you consistently reclaim it, gives you space. Real space. maybe space to read or exercise or work on that creative project you keep putting off, or just plan your day with intention.
I see where this is going.
Suddenly, that one seemingly small decision can snowball. It could lead to developing new skills, improving your health, building confidence, maybe even, down the line, shifting your entire career path.
Yes, it builds what's sometimes called behavioral momentum. Taking that purposeful action in one area makes it psychologically easier somehow to take action in others.
Exactly. You prove to yourself, wait a minute, I can make changes. And that belief, that confidence, starts to ripple outwards into other parts of your life.
This often brings up the question, though, is this kind of major turning point only for, a select few? The insights we looked at offer some pretty big examples.
Yeah, names you'd recognize.
Like J.K. Rowling, right?
Yeah.
Making the decision to finally mail out that Harry Potter manuscript after facing rejection after rejection. Or Oprah Winfrey, choosing to leave traditional news for a talk show format when apparently a lot of people doubted her.
Huge moves. And think about Elon Musk deciding to pour his PayPal earnings into really risky ventures like Tesla and SpaceX. Those were definitely massive pivot points.
Absolutely defining moments for them. But the key takeaway here seems to be that these kinds of turning points, these big shifts kicked off by one brave choice, they aren't just reserved for globally famous people.
Not at all. They happen for everyone. They happen when someone decides, okay, I have to leave this toxic job, or ends an unhealthy relationship that's been dragging them down, or even just takes one consistent, intentional step towards a dream they've held on to for ages.
Okay, so how do you even know? How do you know when you're standing at that kind of crossroads, when you might be ready for that one decision? What we looked at points to some pretty clear signals, actually.
It often starts as a feeling, doesn't it? Like a persistent whisper. Or maybe sometimes it's more like a loud insistence from within.
Yeah.
You might feel this deep sense of unfulfillment, maybe, even if looking from the outside, everything seems perfectly fine.
Or perhaps you're constantly daydreaming about a different kind of life. Or you just feel emotionally drained, totally depleted at the end of every single day.
That pervasive feeling of being stuck, yeah. Or maybe those opportunities land in your lap, but you find yourself always hesitating, never quite pulling the trigger. These are all signals, right? They suggest that your current path maybe isn't fully aligned with your deeper needs or your potential.
And this perspective really challenges that conventional wisdom that playing it safe is always the best bet.
Right. The thinking highlights that staying exactly where you are can actually carry some pretty significant risks of its own.
How so?
Well, staying in a toxic relationship, for example, chips away at your self-worth over time. A really draining job impacts your mental and physical health. Staying silent when you feel you have something important to say that limits your impact, it stifles your spirit.
That's a powerful reframe. It really forces you to ask a different kind of vital question. What's the cost of not changing?
Exactly. Sometimes the risk of inaction, of just staying small or trapped, is actually far greater than the perceived risk of trying something new.
Okay, so that leads us to the practical side. The notes we reviewed detail 15 potential decisions, sort of examples that could serve as these life-altering pivots. The point isn't that you have to do all of them, obviously.
No, definitely not.
But that choosing even one can potentially kick off that powerful domino effect we talked about.
Right. So let's maybe group them a bit. First, there are decisions focused on building a stronger foundation for yourself, for your well-being.
Okay.
The material really stresses prioritizing mental health. And it points out this isn't just like one item on a checklist. It's foundational because good mental health improves the quality of all your other decisions. It builds resilience.
That makes sense. What else falls into that foundation category?
Committing to regular fitness is another big one here. It brings energy, discipline, stuff that spills over positively.
Right.
Consistently waking up earlier was mentioned, specifically to reclaim those morning hours for more intentional living. Limiting the endless scroll, the noise of social media to try and cultivate more presence and peace, less comparison, and reading every day, constantly expanding your perspective, sparking new ideas for growth.
Okay, so those are choices that kind of reinforce you from the inside out. Then there seems to be a powerful group about clearing out what isn't serving you anymore.
Yeah, the letting go decisions. This includes things like leaving a toxic job, making it clear that your peace, your well-being, matters more than just sticking it out in a draining situation. It's not failure, it's self-preservation.
And the really courageous decision often to end unhealthy relationships, which can be incredibly liberating, right? It creates a central space for healthier connections, for healing.
Absolutely. And also, simply deciding to say no more often. It sounds small, but it's described as a really powerful boundary. It protects your most valuable resources, your time and your energy. Saying no to one thing means you can say yes to something better.
And forgiving someone, or even forgiving yourself, that's framed as a conscious choice, a decision that releases the grip of the past. It clears out tremendous emotional clutter, freeing up so much energy.
It's choosing freedom, basically. Freedom from resentment or guilt. Then the third group, maybe, is about actively stepping towards your potential, taking positive action.
Like what?
Like starting a side hustle. Igniting some creativity, building new skills, maybe creating an alternative income stream, or just a path to more freedom, or deciding to go back to school, or learn a specific new skill that's a direct investment in yourself that could open doors.
Moving to a new place is on the list too. A physical reset button, almost. It can refresh your perspective, shake up old routines, expose you to totally new opportunities.
And asking for help is mentioned too, which is often underrated as a turning point. It takes humility, courage, but it can unlock crucial support, wisdom, guidance.
Investing in yourself is highlighted too, like really seeing yourself as your most valuable asset and acting accordingly.
And finally, maybe the simplest, but also the most profound. Just taking one single, tangible step toward a big dream you've been holding on to.
Like writing the first page.
Exactly. Writing that first page, making that first call, do that initial bit of research. That single decision shifts your identity.
Yeah.
You go from being someone who wants to do it someday to someone who is actually doing it right now, today.
Wow, that whole collection of potential shifts is really, really inspiring. Okay, so once you've maybe got an idea of a decision you could make, how do you move from just thinking about it to actually making it with some confidence?
The thinking here suggests 3 crucial elements are needed: clarity, courage, and commitment.
Okay, break those down.
Clarity means getting really honest with yourself about what you truly want. Not what your boss wants or your family expects or what society tells you you should want, but what you genuinely desire.
That can be harder than it sounds.
It really can. Then courage is acknowledging, okay, fear and doubt are probably going to show up, but deciding to move forward anyway. It's not the absence of fear, it's acting despite it.
Right.
And commitment.
Yeah.
That's about standing by your choice once you've made it, especially when things get tough. Letting the process unfold without immediately jumping back to second-guessing yourself 5 minutes later.
And the materials we looked at even mentioned some practical frameworks that might help, right? Like using methods such as SMART goals, making your decision specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Yeah, or things like the Eisenhower matrix, the urgent, important grid, to help you figure out the very first, most impactful steps to take after you've made the big decision. They aren't magic wands, obviously, but they're tools. Tools to help structure your intention into concrete action.
This brings us back to that resistance, though, doesn't it? Those nagging what-ifs that pop up.
Definitely. The material touches on that status quo bias. Again, that strong, almost gravitational pull towards the familiar, the fear of the unknown. It's often way worse in our imagination than the reality actually turns out to be.
So the key isn't necessarily waiting until the fear completely vanishes, because let's be honest, that might be never.
Right. It's more about reframing those what-ifs. Instead of just dwelling on, oh no, what if I fail? Consciously flip it. Ask yourself, okay, but what if I succeed? What could happen if this actually works out? The discussions point out that taking action is actually the most effective way to train your mind to trust its own inner compass. You don't wait for trust to appear. You build it by acting.
What's particularly powerful, I think, is seeing how consistently taking action, especially after that initial big or scary decision, creates this very real ripple effect through your whole life. That one yes inevitably seems to lead to others.
Yeah, like saying yes to prioritizing your health. That often leads quite naturally to better sleep, clearer thinking, maybe even new social connections through fitness activities or groups.
Or saying yes to finally leaving a job that just wasn't right. That might quickly lead to, reaching out to your network, finding a mentor, maybe even starting that business you'd only dreamed about before.
And saying yes to something like therapy could have profound impacts on your healing, your relationships, your whole sense of self-worth. These aren't isolated events.
They become, what do the notes call them? Keystone habits.
Exactly. That initial decision creates a fundamental shift that makes other positive changes not just seem possible, but actually significantly easier to implement. It builds momentum.
It really highlights the difference between just sort of surviving life, going through the motions, and actively thriving in it. And thriving seems to come from making those bolder, more intentional decisions, like setting clear boundaries, intentionally creating a better environment for yourselves, actively chasing what gives you meaning, consciously building the life you actually want.
And we don't have to just look at celebrities for inspiration either.
Yeah.
The examples we saw included really relatable stories. There was Lisa, who used a sabbatical that was her one decision point to transition from a corporate job she disliked into pursuing photography full-time.
Okay.
Or Jamal, who started completely transforming his health just by deciding to take a consistent 15-minute walk every single day. That was his starting point.
Wow.
And Nora, who found peace and basically reclaimed her life by making the incredibly difficult decision to leave a toxic marriage.
These stories really underscore that a single decision can do more than just change a life. In many cases, it sounds like it can fundamentally save one.
Absolutely. And once that decision is made, it's really important to support it, right? To nurture it. The notes highlight habits that help maintain the momentum that's generated by that initial choice.
Like what kind of habits?
Things like taking just a few minutes for morning reflection or journaling, maybe, just to stay connected to why you made the decision in the first place. Incorporating some kind of daily movement, planning out the next day, the night before that, helps maintain focus. And consciously choosing to consume, wisdom and inspiration rather than just draining noise or negativity.
Accountability seems huge, too, whether it's just to yourself through tracking or something, or maybe telling a supportive friend or mentor. And consistency, of course.
Oh, consistency is absolutely key after that initial leap. It's the small, repeated actions built on that one big decision that really solidify the change. Consistency is what compounds the impact of that first brave choice.
And finally, the actual science of taking action offers some compelling support for this whole idea.
Yeah, the thinking points out that motivation, it often doesn't magically appear before you act. More often, it actually arises from taking action.
So action first, motivation follows.
Often, yes. There's a psychological concept mentioned, the Zeigarnik effect, that suggests simply starting something creates a kind of mental tension in your brain, an urge to complete it, that generates its own momentum.
So you don't actually need perfect clarity or tons of motivation just to begin. Taking the action itself is what helps you gain the clarity and build the motivation.
Exactly. And then there's the concept of neuroplasticity. It shows us our brains aren't these fixed, static things. They're remarkably adaptable.
Right. They can change.
Consistent action literally rewires your brain. It strengthens new neural pathways. So that initial discomfort you feel with a new behavior, it fades over time as that new way of being becomes your new normal. Taking action is how you literally become the person you aspire to be, built one decision, one action at a time.
So bringing this all together, though, what we've explored today really reinforces the truly surprising, almost underestimated power that's contained within a single conscious decision, the power to initiate significant, lasting change. It's not about waiting for some perfect future moment that might never arrive. It's about choosing right now, even if there's fear, even if there's uncertainty.
Yeah, transformation isn't some exclusive club just for the lucky or the fearless. It seems it's accessible to anyone who's willing to face that internal resistance, acknowledge it, and make that intentional choice to step onto a new path. It really does all begin with that one step.
So if one decision truly is all it takes to start changing your life, maybe the question to leave you with is, what is your one decision today?